Jay's press recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
Very grateful that Jay's press record and has remembered. How are we all doing today on a level? Remember, said I'm not allowed to just ask you general questions like how are you doing. So, how productive has your day been so far? Between the level of 0 being really unproductive, 10 being really productive. Just give me a show of hands. Ooh, Emma, check you out. I love that. I love that for you. Marie, how are you doing?
I'd say it's productive, but productive in the sense that I'm having rest because I need the rest. So that is productive, I think.
Yeah, self-love day, self-care day. That's good. Freddie, how you doing, King? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, no, I'm having a great day, man. I've had a great week. I'm having a great life.
Oh, I'm loving it.
Yeah,
I love this
thanks,
for you,
Freddie.
man. That's what I'm
energy.
talking about, man. That's the energy.
We don't do anything but great. You know what I mean? We don't do nothing but great.
That's the energy we love. That's Fola, how you doing, lovely? You good?
It's mine.
Yes, we can hear you, fella.
Oh, can you? Oh, God.
We can hear.
It's just like, it's my, and then the editor thing comes out, talking to yourself. Right. But it's a public thing. But I'm good, thank you. I've got a bit of sinusitis, so if my voice sounds huskier and deeper than usual, yay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because it's normally a bit high pitched.
I'm loving it. I am loving it. I am loving it. All right, I can see loads of people on and cameras are not off. Cameras are off, and I'm assuming it may be for reasons, so I'm not going to harass you. And I really want to give René as much time as humanly possible. So this is René Carayol. I don't know how many of you guys know or come across him. And I think a few years ago, René, you did a program on BBC, How to Pay Off Your Mortgage in a Year. Or 2 years, wasn't it? How long ago was that on the big bat?
Done a few series, Simone.
Yeah, you did quite a bit on TV. So René is amazing. We had invited René to come and talk to our leaders last year, and he proved to be one of the most popular sessions. He's got a book out called Knowing About Your Spike, and for me, I think I'm going to share the story again. So René, please excuse me. I had met René, or I had gone to see René speak when I was about 18. Which obviously is last year. No. But that was many moons ago. And I was at university, and it was a black enterprise entrepreneurial group. And René came and spoke and blew my mind. And I had always promised myself that I was going to reconnect with him and wanted to work with him in some capacity. So I'm really chuffed to be able to kind of include him in the process of what we're doing. And I'm really excited to have him here with you guys. I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to hand it over to René because he's articulate and amazing, and he can explain everything for himself far better than I can. So thank you, René, for being here. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to be in the background, and I've got my pen and paper at the ready, and I'm looking forward to the goodness that you're about to share with us. Thanks, René.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you. Look, I came along last year, had a fantastic session with a bunch of super talented, super ambitious people who were finding it more difficult than it should be to get to the next stage of their chosen careers. The session we had a lot of exchanges, and I was pushing them on the experience we have with our clients. And we work nearly exclusively with big multinational businesses. And I spend my time personally, privileged enough to coach the chief executives of those businesses. Many will say that. We actually do. And we just haven't been found out yet. Probably because I'm moving so quickly, they never find me in the same place twice. But as I was explaining to Simone, first thing this morning, 8 o'clock, I was coaching Francesco Ceccato, Chief Executive Barclays Europe. And I've been coaching Francesco for the last 3 years. I met him because I was coaching his boss, Andy Jenkins, when he was Group Chief Executive of Barclays. I coached his predecessor, and his predecessor. 4 different chief executives of Barclays Bank. There was a time when I didn't quite look like the advisor, the coach, the executive coach of the chief executive. Those days are changing, and they're changing quickly. I never thought in my lifetime we'd see this level of change. 25% of our work now is coaching chief executives in the US. If someone said we will be doing inclusive leadership where we're in demand in America, that has always historically been 10, 15 years ahead of us in terms of diversity inclusion, that's no longer the case today. America is even more divided than we are here in the UK. That polarization has led to everyone's very careful, treading on eggshells, polarized and negative. And let me emphasize negative. We're in a microcosm, we're seeing a similar thing here in the UK. Empirically, since May the 26th, 2020, the tragic murder of George Floyd, the world has moved in a way that no one could have predicted. There are those who will spend their time. Can I get you to mute, please? There are those who spend their time complaining about it still isn't where it needs to be. We're recommending, highlighting for those who will be the positive agents of further change. And take this moment to capitalize upon those changes, those opportunities that are available now. We need everyone pushing themselves forward. We need as many senior appointments as we can get. We've got a generation coming up that needs to look up and see people like them. Now's not the time to stay cynical. Now's the time to move forward. And with that, let's start now. What I want you to do also is any questions, any issues, any challenges, come to me and we'll deal with them. Stop me anywhere along the way. There's nothing like a real, authentic exchange. The first thing, the business of business is no longer just business. People talk about ESG, people talk about climate change, people talk about sustainability. We are only getting called from the chief executive's office when their diversity program has stalled. And so many are stalling for all the similar reasons. This is not about data. This is not about measurement. Far too many organizations have got their heads stuck in measurement. And once you start measuring diversity, it starts to look better. But the measures is still talking about it. It's not walking the walk. And what we see happen in so many businesses, euphoria that rising numbers of diverse personnel coming in across the company leads to a false sense of security and euphoria. As soon as the numbers start to become significant and more senior people from different backgrounds come in, they soon realize the environment has not been set up for success. Nothing has changed, but we're bringing in people from a different background. The first bit of advice we always give, tackle inclusion before you do diversity. Create an environment where anyone, no matter what their background, can bring their authentic self to their place of work and flourish. Not be tolerated, not be accepted, flourish, thrive. If you haven't done that, you haven't done anything. So the only call we're going to accept is from the chief executive, nothing beneath, when diversity is stalled and they're putting significant personal capital, financial resource behind inclusion. So forgive me, everything I say to you from now is in that rarefied space. We're in the boardroom, we're in the chief executive's office of the multinational, and they want to make this work. And the reason we're in, because they've failed so far. That's the context. We got involved with one of my mates, Jonathan Sorrell, Chief Operating Officer of Capstone, the hedge fund, called me a couple of years ago when they were involved in the 100 Black Graduate Intern Scheme. Called me up, he said, look, it's been really tough. We're thinking of going to 10,000 Black graduate internships. Can you help? We're going to fund it end to end. This is the blue blood hedge fund based out of New York populated with a number of Brits. One would say, why would you do it? They have funded it end to end. That would never have happened yesteryear. I didn't call him, he called me asking for help. 3 of his colleagues, black men in the financial world, got together and put this scheme together, but Capstone funded it end to end. I can't tell you how many phone calls we had, I can't tell you how many Zoom calls, morning, noon and night, pushing to make this happen. It happened. I didn't think I'd see something like that funded by a traditional New York-based hedge fund that made this happen. 3 men working on a building site in the burning sun, breaking rocks is the toughest work you've ever seen. The journalist comes to the first one and says, why do you do this work? I haven't worked for 3 years. I took the first job I could get. Goes second, why do you do this job? I've got a wife and 3 kids to feed. I took the first job I could get. Goes to the third one, why do you do this job? He wipes the sweat from his brow, looks up proudly and says, I'm helping to build a cathedral. I'm helping to build a cathedral. It might be a mosque, temple, or synagogue, depending on where you are. The message is no one in the company does a menial, manual, repetitive, inconsequential job. Every member of the team, every colleague, no matter where you work, is significant in helping to build that cathedral. This is lesson number 1 for every chief executive we coach. Have that vision, have that purpose. You need to be the living embodiment of that purpose. If inclusion is important to you, everyone you meet every day of the week, you're reinforcing the promised land of that cathedral. And you can't do it once at the town hall, once every single day, you have to drive that mantra. So everyone who works in that business understands it's a priority, it's key, it's the values, it's the purpose. No one of you should be considering taking a job in any organization that doesn't practice that. It's purpose. A purpose-driven organization, a purpose-driven business, and they're out there. And let me be harsh. There's no point joining and 6 weeks later saying, they don't cater for me. There's no room for me. Check it out beforehand. What are the values? Stop deploying your values into businesses that don't value you. They may need you, but do they want you? We're working with businesses that want you and need you. Take the time. Go and spend some time sitting in the reception. Speak to people who used to work there. Speak to people who do work there. Most of all, speak to suppliers. They'll tell you the truth. What's it really like there? Trish Werner, she was Chief Marketing Officer at HSBC. She was attracted by Kone, the big Finnish elevator business. They do elevator estates, big machinery engineering. Kone enticed her by saying we're inclusive, we need outsiders, we need people who are going to be different. We need women, we want people of color, we want people of different faiths. We are really homogenous. We tend to be Finnish, we tend to be male, we tend to be engineering. There was a 3-month courtship before Trish, leaving her family in London, started to commute to Helsinki. Something wasn't quite right. She was a direct report of the chief executive. Something wasn't quite right. It wasn't inclusive. They needed her skills. They're desperate for what she could bring. But no one appeared to want her. She's moved all her family. Her partner gave up his job to go with her. They've taken their kids. She invited me to come and do some work with them. I didn't have a lot of good news for her. She was needed, but not wanted. It's a diverse environment. It's not an inclusive environment. I want all of you to understand this. Do not give up your talent easily. The world has changed. There are people who are desperate for you and your talent and want your capability. There are others who aren't. Do the homework, do the legwork, do the investigation. We've seen the biggest change in leadership I've ever seen since I've been coached. For 22 years coaching at the top level, we've seen the biggest change we've ever seen. Over 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the chief executive tended to be, I'll choose my words carefully, the cleverest man in the room. They made every call, they made every decision, they solved every problem. Nothing moved without them. In a world that was relatively so much slower, they could. The world was incremental. Then the world changed. The advent of technology. Everything became faster. Everything became multifaceted. One person couldn't make all those calls anymore. And we saw collaborations and new leadership. We saw a different sort of leader that led with a team. It was the team that made the calls, not the individual. It was the team that ran the business. Something has happened during the pandemic, which I want everyone to take advantage of. We've seen the biggest change in leadership we've ever seen before. It's no longer the cleverest man in the room. It's no longer the team. Today, the role of the chief executive, the leader of the business, is to create an environment where everyone can flourish, no matter what your background, no matter where you're located, no matter what time zone you're in. The pandemic has forced a different sort of capability, and we're bringing out a different sort of leader. And many firms and organizations are moving to this model. They're still a bit clunky, they're still a bit clumsy, but it's there. All their resources aren't in one building anymore. All their resources are located all over the place. And now it takes a different sort of leader. And I'm meeting many of them, where empathy is so important, the ability to listen, vulnerability. And the days of a homogeneous team are coming to an end. We are excited, optimistic, and we're experiencing this change. There's not a firm we're working with, not a business we're working with, which isn't going through this change. Has anyone got it perfect yet? No. But they're all on this journey. Some research came out last November, which is a game changer. In the midst of what we call the Great Resignation, more people leaving business in North America and Europe than we've ever seen before, especially here in the UK. The question was asked by Humu, a brilliant small consultancy in America, run by my good friend Laszlo Bock, who is the head of people at Google. They asked one simple question. In the midst of the Great Resignation, what is it the top talent's looking for? What's going to make them stay? 5 things came out. 3 of them have been there forever. Learning, 4.8 times more likely to stay. Clarity, i.e. remove uncertainty, 5.6 times more likely to stay. Trust used to be the holy grail, the promised land. The more I'm trusted, the more I go the extra mile. 5.8 times more likely to stay. But the pandemic has brought 2 new things in that we've not seen before. Purpose and inclusion. These are the game changers. This is why we're so excited. 9.2 times more likely to stay in a purpose-driven business. And I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment. 9.4 times more likely to stay in an inclusive business. This is the message that's getting out to everyone. You want to hang on to your best talent? You better create an inclusive environment. We have never been busier. I've had to grow my team from 7 people to 22 people because of demand over the last few months. This is not going away. So I want you to recognize the world is changing, and you've got to think about where you deploy your capability. The opportunities are there, but you have to be discerning. This is the classic. Organizations go from being homogenous to diverse to inclusive to belonging. That was always the classic. Belonging is always the vision, the dream, the promised land, and we don't know anyone who's quite got there yet. Out of our clients, we would say that Microsoft are probably the closest. But it's the vision, the North Star that keeps you going all the time. Our learning tells us, swap, diverse and inclusive. To go from homogenous to diverse is easy and dangerous. Where all the heavy lifting and hard work is creating an inclusive environment. That's got to be the step number one. There's no point bringing people who are different in and watching them fail because nothing's changed to enable them to succeed. How many of those stories have you heard? Time to end those stories. So when we're coaching leadership for an inclusive world, we would coach, call it out, but with forgiveness, not confrontation. Assume that it's a learning opportunity, it's a coaching opportunity. Don't create division. Drive change. Be brutally honest with care. Enable people to learn. Enable people to change. Nothing will change if you continually divide the world. We coach our leaders to give up more authority than feels natural to those who are marginalized, than to those who are underrepresented. And overall, for everyone, we say, be more compassionate than you think you need to be. Let's drive a caring world where every one of us will be welcomed. Every one of us will be valued. Every one of us will be treasured. We're seeing this work. We're seeing progress, which I'm going to talk you through. So we do an exercise. I'm not going to do it today, but I'm just going to tell you about it. This is a ground-changing exercise for everyone we work with, and you'll get it in seconds. We take the senior team, and it's normally the chief executive, and they're between 10 and 20 direct reports. We split them into teams of 5. We ask 2 people out of those 5 to think about a time when they were excluded. Be it personal or be it professional, think about a time when you were excluded. And I don't have to say this, but I will. It's always 80% women who have the stories when they are excluded. They're the most recent, they're the most vibrant, they're still alive in their minds. And we asked 2 of them to share stories with the other 3. What I've just done in the setup there, I've created a safe space. I've created psychological safety. I've given people permission to share things they wouldn't normally share. I've enabled others to listen in a way they wouldn't normally listen. Psychological safety, you don't need to be a psychologist. I've just done it. We've done this exercise over 100 times around the world. Game started, songs, chanting, calling my dad names. He never said a word. His hands, one hand in his pocket, one hand holding my hand. It was incessant. He didn't turn around, he didn't respond, he just stood there. And the bit that I know that got to him more than anything else was people just spat on him. Dad had jet black hair. It was all over my dad's hair, the side of his face, all over his coat. I just remember leaving and he took out his white hanky and wiped everything off him. We left at half time, held his hand, we went home, never ever to set foot in a football ground again. So we break them into our groups. We get 2 of them to share a time when they felt excluded. I can't tell you how emotional it gets, because you could have felt there with me, telling a story when you were excluded. And afterwards, I choose one person who was listening to share how it made them feel. I can't tell you how tough that is. Some struggle to even speak. The truth is, nobody understands the power of inclusion until they've felt the trauma of exclusion. And many people at the top of an organization, top of a business, haven't been excluded ever, or since they were really young. And just listening to an immediate tale that's so emotional, so clear, and 80 to 90% of the stories are easily avoidable. They happen every day. And most people at the top of the company have no idea they happen every day. As these stories are being told, people are changing instantly. And we feel that change and grab it. Grab that moment. And then equip them with tools to ensure that doesn't happen in their areas. It's nothing more complex than that. And what we're doing, what I've just done with you, what we do in the boardroom, we do in the executive suite, is provide experiences that allow people to draw conclusions that hadn't occurred to them. Only then will the conclusions belong to them. The changes we've seen in America, even more than here, unbelievable. And what we need to do is capitalize upon the moment. I never thought in my career this would ever happen. It's here. Yet I spend a lot of my time fighting against the negativity, the cynicism. It's never going to happen. We can't see the change. We need to be part of this change. It's there happening. And we need to push. We need to drive it. It's not going to be given to anyone. But with a different mindset, a leadership mindset, not a complaining mindset. Take a leadership position, role model, push, drive, courageous. There are no innocent bystanders anymore. Every one of us. One of my clients, Richard Smith, is the chief executive of Unite Students. They provide student accommodation for most of our universities. He told a story in his executive suite. He's sitting on a double-decker bus on the top floor with his 7-year-old daughter. There's an elderly black woman sitting near the front. She's surrounded by 4 young white louds. They're noisy, they're rude, they're shouting, they're boisterous. She's on her own, up at the front of the bus. They start shouting her, calling her names. No one says a word. She takes her handbag and puts it between her and pushes herself up against the window. They're getting nasty, they're getting rude. It's toxic. Nobody says a word. It now gets racist, ugly. It's hostile. They're shouting at her. Nobody says a word. Eventually, his 7-year-old daughter breaks away from him, runs up to the front of the bus, confronts the 4 young men. Leave her alone. You're racist, you're horrible, you're nasty. Leave her alone. Nobody says a word. At the next bus stop, the 4 young louds jump off the bus. They've been told, they've been called, they've been challenged. Poor old woman is still on her own. Nobody says a word. Richard says to his executives, if you were there, what would you do? They challenged back. If it happened again, Richard, what would you do? I intervened at this moment. Historical data tells us Brits are more concerned about our personal safety and would do nothing. We wouldn't intervene. Recent data over the last 2 years tells us something different. If one brave person stands up, others will stand with them. If we're going to drive the change that we need those one brave leaders. One person to stand up. If you want to look at what Lewis Hamilton's doing, one brave person. One brave, you're going to get a lot of criticism. You're not going to be popular. One brave person, others will jump up with you. Everyone on this call can be that one brave person. Brands we've worked with over the last 3 years, every single one of these brands is moving in this direction. I'm lucky enough to have coached some fantastic business leaders, every one of these. I'm giving the inclusive leadership to. We're in the boardroom, we're relevant, we have a voice. We're not afraid to speak up. I coach Louise, she's president of TJX. TJX owned TK Maxx, $54 billion retailer. She's got 70 vice presidents as direct reports that run Europe. We're meeting for the first time after a long time during the pandemic. Louise is brave enough, I'm going to interview her in front of her people. It's unscripted. You can't fake it anymore. No one wants a scripted interview. They don't know what she stands for. And I'm going to ask questions that her people probably wouldn't have the courage to ask. It's at the Grove, fabulous hotel near Watford, big glass open room. I step down, sit down in front of Louise, and I say, just to get things going, Louise, how have the last 18 months been in front of her 70 VPs? She says, it's been great. The team have exceeded my expectations. I'm empowering them more and more and more. I'm giving them more decisions to make they're so good. At that moment, someone coughed at the back of the auditorium. In the way that Brits cough at the back when they disagree. You know, this is violent disagreement in British terms, actually. So I stood up, I walked to the back, and someone disagreed, and eventually one guy stands up. And as he stands up, he says, Louise, in actual fact, you haven't been more empowering. You've put 2 or 3 processes in place and they've taken away some of our authority. We've got to jump through hoops to get things done, whereas before, we would get them done straight away. Louise started to blotch red. She starts wringing her hands. She stands up. She said, I did put those processes in place, but I thought they'd make things more efficient. Not for one moment did I think they'd remove any authority from you. The room just went still. And Louise says, with her voice, her throat dry and her voice breaking, let's change that with immediate effect. Let's take all those processes away with immediate effect and go back to where we were. If you heard the whistling and cheering in the room, here's the big lesson. Owning up to the fact that you made a mistake is a sign of strength, not weakness. If only our politicians today could hear that and understand it. We all make mistakes. And in this world of inclusion, everyone's going to make mistakes. Let's not expect everyone to be perfect. Well, let's create an environment where they can say they got it wrong. We can reverse it and move forward together. Us also. We want things to happen when we get it wrong. Let's just fess up and move on. We need a degree of honesty, and where we're trying to get to, it's not being done before. It's unprecedented. Most of the chief executives I'm coaching are not perfect. Many of them are clumsy. Most of them frigid to make a decision or move in this area because they don't want to offend, they don't want to get people. I'm pushing them to make decisions. I'm saying to them, the only mistake is the one you don't learn from. Do something. We will learn. If I'm going to get them to be real, then we've got to be honest, realistic about our expectations. It's not going to be perfect. We've got to move it forward. we can move it forward quickly. I spoke to you about purpose. I'm going to spend a couple of moments here. This is really important. Nearly every business we work with, every organization, is obsessed with what we call mission. On the left-hand side, we're trying to move them to purpose. A purpose-driven business. It's not what needs to be done, it's why we do it. And this is the game changer. This is why we're called back again and again and again. Everyone needs to deliver. You've got to have the numbers. But the business of business is no longer just business. And we insert the purpose. It's not just operating a business, it's sharing a dream. It's not just strategy, it's culture. Not just inspiration, it's aspiration. Yes, we've got to have buying, but we've got to have ownership. We've got to have focus, we've got to have passion. Building a company or it's building a community. I said before, it's not just the laying of bricks, it's building cathedrals. It's not just customer service, it's creating happiness. There's a bigger reason for doing everything. And far too many of my colleagues are fighting on the left-hand side. The battle to be won is on the right-hand side. Everyone knows this. When John F. Kennedy walked into Cape Canaveral, the guys mopping the floor, he said, "What are you doing?" "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." That's purpose. We're not just going to go into work and do the work that's asked of us. We're working in that business because it has a purpose that fits who we are and who we want to be and where we want our next generation to be. I coach Ralph Hammers. He was the youngest ever chief executive of ING Bank in the Netherlands. He was the youngest appointed at the age of 43. 7 years later, he was the longest serving. He's just gone to be the chief executive of Switzerland's biggest bank, UBS. I'm going to play a bit where Ralph talks about the cathedral. Ralph talks about purpose. This was filmed on his first day of work when I started working with him as his coach. There were scripts for everything. We threw the scripts away and I just interviewed him. It's just me and him. And it was shot on camera to show there's no auto cue, there's no script, there's just me and authentic Ralph. What can your mixed number of stakeholders expect from a future with you as chief executive?
I think the cornerstone of everything we're going to do will be building trust and showing care. Trust for our clients, trust for our employees going in the right direction, trust for our shareholders to getting returns going forward. But it's also because of that element that it will not change overnight, because it will have to be built up gradually. It will be built up by being more open, being more transparent, being more vulnerable at certain moments as a leader as well, standing for some of the decisions you take, explaining, connect with the people, connect with your stakeholders in a direct way rather than through all the communication means we can kind of develop these days. But that's really the starting point of everything. And I think if you're really successful in listening to all those stakeholders and getting out the right mix to build the trust, that is the foundation for any prosperity for ING in the future.
An amazing man. Built an inclusive environment long before the word was fashionable. Brought in talent from everywhere. It was a privilege to work with him. He's in his second year at UBS. He's coming over to London in a couple of months for dinner, and I'm sure we'll find a good reason to work together again. What we coach is if you have that dream, that vision, that purpose, you create shared ownership around your top team. You have mutual responsibility and everyone's accountable for delivering. And it works. but you have to start at the top. You can't start in the front line. You can't start in a region. You have to take the top team with you. They have to live this and breathe this. It's not a process. It's not a plaque in reception. It's a way of life. And we're seeing it, we're touching it, we're delivering it. And it's a combination of being values-led and performance-driven. It isn't strategy. I hear all this stuff about our diversity strategy. It's not strategy. It's culture. It's not a series of initiatives, not a series of programs. You're changing the way people behave. You're changing their attitudes permanently. As I'm hoping to prove to you today, stories, stories, stories. Stories keep it real. Don't tell people off. Show them what can be done with stories of their colleagues doing the right thing. Reinforce it with stories, reinforce it with stories. When I left university, my first job was at Marks and Spencer. Someone somewhere realized that I might be able to lead teams. I was given an IT team to lead. One of my very first people to join my team was Martin. He was sent down from Leeds. Martin was a redhead, big thatch of ginger hair, and a proud Yorkshireman. When I was interviewing for the role, I can never forget him saying, "Do you know something, René? I've never met a black person. I've never worked with a black person." And I'm thinking, maybe that's not the best line for your new boss. But anyway, he was honest and a decent guy, and we just hit it off. But he knew nothing about urban life, about cosmopolitan life, about multicultural life. But he was gifted, talented, and an incredibly loyal worker. We had one of those weeks that you rarely get in your career where everything we touched turned to gold. We broke every target, we hit every number, we delivered it was just unbelievable. So on the Friday evening, we were based out of Chiswick, the IT centre for Masterclass Spencer Chiswick. On the Chiswick round, there's a Fuller's pub. I took all my team on Friday after work. We're going for a bit of a drink. When it gets to about 9:30, there's only me and Martin left. We're going to walk down to the tube station to get the tube home. I asked for the bill. The barman comes up, and when I asked for the bill, he says, "Is there anyone else who could pay the bill?" I said, "I beg your pardon. Is there anyone else who could pay the bill?" Martin says, "I'll pay the bill." So Martin, shut up and get out of the way. I said, "I'm paying the bill." "No, I'd like someone other than you to pay the bill." I'm now starting to fume. Martin's saying, "René, just get out of the way, I'll pay the bill." Martin, will you shut up? The manager of the pub came over. He'd seen me there a few times. He said, "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" I explained what had happened. He said to the barman, "Get in the office. I'll see you there in 10 minutes. He said to me, "I'm really sorry about that. The drinks are on the house today." I said, "I don't want them on the house. I insist on paying. I'm going to pay for those drinks." Martin said, "Will you calm down?" "I'm not calming down. I'm going to pay for them." Eventually, I calmed down. Martin knew nothing about what it was like to walk in my shoes. I'm fuming with him. I graciously accepted the no payment for the day, and we never saw that barman again. Martin and I are walking down to the tube station, and we're arguing. It's heated, the way only friends can argue. And it's highly charged. And I'm not backing down, and I'm feeling he's as ignorant as hell. He thinks I'm way too sensitive about race, and we're screaming at each other. When we get to the tube station, we down our briefcases and we really go at it. I can't understand why he can't empathize, why he can't get this, why he doesn't. What's the matter with him? At that moment, a tall, stocky, white guy comes over, says to Martin, "You having problems with him? Do you want some help?" And at that moment, Martin turns on him, jumps on him, and I'm separating the two of them. And eventually, we chase this guy down the road. By the time we come back, I look at Martin. He looks at me, and for a moment, just for a moment, Martin had walked in my shoes. Martin had felt what it's like to be excluded, to be different. That's some 30 years ago. Martin and I are still really good friends. Every time we meet, what's the first thing we talk about? It changed him. He'd never felt excluded before. Every one of us has a story to be shared as learning, to help others know what it's like to feel invisible, what it's like to feel excluded, what it feels to be left out. And until the lions have their own storytellers, the tales of the hunt will always favor the hunter. Every one of you on this call has stories to share. Let's make them learning stories. Let's make them change stories. Let's share those stories to others. Those people who are just ignorant and don't know, like Martin. Let's bring them around so they can be change agents too. So, we spend a lot of time with people trying to do tons and tons of well-intentioned, well-meaning diversity initiatives. We think, and we've seen, they're well-intentioned, but if they're still sitting in the old homogenous culture, nothing much changes. We think go on the big journey of change the whole culture. Do you need to work? Is it worthwhile working on gender pay gap? Of course it is. Why not start with a meritocracy from day one? Change it so it's fair for everyone. And we think instead of trying to fix the exhaust on an old diesel car, get yourself an electric car. Take the big step. This is why you need a chief executive involved. Change the whole lot. Start again. Start with an inclusive culture. Instead of trying to fix everything on the left, start with a new culture. We are doing a lot of this work. It is real, it's expensive, it's time-taking, it's going to take 2 to 3 years. We are doing a lot of this work. We see all the initiatives on the left. We change them to a cultural change on the right. But you need to be in the boardroom to get that change, to get that support. Simone, Wellingshaw will send you and Jay the slides so you can, the whole deck, so you can share it with my colleagues.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful. That'd be really grateful. That'd be really grateful. We've got like about 10 minutes. Like, I mean, because that was fascinating in terms of how you're changing cultures in organizations. And I think for a lot of us, we're on the other side where we're wanting that change to happen. Advice will kind of, like you're saying, be brave, but whatever advice would you give those kind of, you know, wanting this change to happen, because obviously these changes affect us and allow us to progress in our chosen careers. What can we be doing as people of color? Most of us, we're producers, we're commissioners, series directors, stuff like that. So not necessarily in the boardroom, not necessarily in a position where we can directly affect change, but what can we be doing from where we are?
I've given you 2 bits of advice, 2 important bits of advice.
Yeah.
The one is the most, what you can all do today. Is there you have to find the ability to speak up, speak out carefully, choose your moment. There are no innocent bystanders anymore. You can't be quiet and put up with it. But you've got to find the right language, the right place, the right time, and the right repository. That's the difficult tactical one. That keeps you alive every day, being true to yourself. The far more important one, which I spent a lot of time talking to you about, be discerning about who you work with and why you work there. We turn away far more opportunities to work with organizations than the ones we do. March 2020, McKinsey & Co., the global management consulting business, did a seminal piece of research, which was the game changer. March 2020, 2 months before George Floyd. They proved that homogenous teams, i.e. a team made up of people who come from similar backgrounds. It meant alignment was easier, decision-making was easier, the quality of the decisions weren't the best. In a more diverse team, making decisions is much tougher. People have different views, creative aberration. healthy tension, seeing things differently, new ideas. The leaders have to work a lot harder. Alignment is so much more difficult. But what they measured was the quality of the outcomes of 34% tangible financial improvement uplift from diverse teams. The debate's over. Many of our clients are moving towards it. This is not an overnight change. Deep cultural change. But you have a part to play by being so much more discerning about how and where you choose to deploy your talent. Is it easy? No. You still have to survive. You still have to thrive. Sometimes you're going to go with your armor on because you know it's tough. But you also got to start researching which are the inclusive places or the ones moving to inclusion where I want to be better appreciated. I can bring my authentic self to my place of work. And I'm going to be appreciated not for just the capability and skills I bring, but for who I am. When I started my career at Marks and Spencer's, 8:30 every day, I arrived for work, left my personality at reception, and went up to my place of work, and I became the person they needed me to be. I spoke differently, I dressed differently. I even laughed differently. At 6:30 at reception, I'd pick up my personality and go home. Whereas many of you reckon I'd be a completely different person. Those days are long gone. I'm way too old and way too ugly at my vintage to play those games anymore. I don't have to. But there's a generation that may still feel they have to. We are the role models for that generation. We are the coaches for that generation. So a couple of bits of advice. I've yet to see anyone achieve their leadership potential without the intervention of a mentor. I've yet to see it at any level. Even the best chief executive, the heads of state we coach, I've yet to see it. But here's the bit that's the game changer. Research out of Harvard has shown us mentees get a 16% career acceleration. Mentors get a 53% career acceleration. And I'm going to say that again so we don't lose it. Mentees, 16% career acceleration. Mentors, 53%. Why? Learn to listen better. Learn to care. Learn to walk in someone else's shoes. Learn to feel what they're feeling. Educated by the person that's in front of you. Becoming the coach, becoming the carer. That's the sort of leadership many companies are looking for at the top today. So here's the advice. Step number one, go find yourself a mentor. Someone who behaves in a way that you would want to. Someone that can help you find the network that opens the doors for you in your career. Just as importantly, go find yourself a mentee. Someone who's on their way up. Someone who's you can show them the path. Someone that you can listen to. Someone that you can coach. Someone that you can look out for. It changes you as a leader. There's no downside. The sort of leaders we're looking for going forward, the best listeners, the best carers, those who can walk in my shoes, those who can empathize, those who can help me understand that I'm not perfect, to own up to my mistakes. The only mistake is the one I don't learn from. To be there for me in my hour of need. Not to be the endless complainer, but to be the positive agent of change. You can do both. Okay?
Yeah, that's powerful. And I think also what came out very clear is if any of you guys still didn't get the importance of coaching and who does coaching and the idea that coaching may be around to fix you, or do you know what I mean? It's that René, sorry, just listed off so many companies and so many organizations that he's working with as a coach. So that kind of the benefit of the coaching, being able to lean into that and understand how important that is. I think that René really kind of articulated that really beautiful. Before we go, have we got any more? Sorry, René, did you want to say something?
So I would, the closing question that will mean a lot to all of you, and you've got an advantage over the likes of us. If I'm talking to you, if I can bring alive the model of the leader that works best today, think about mothers at home. That is the model. The full empathy, the understanding all their charges. And I don't just mean the children, grand, uncle, aunt, to empathetically know, to vicariously understand what touch is needed, to understand when to have boundaries, when to have sanctions, when to put the arm around, when to raise the voice, when just to be there for them, when to keep quiet and just listen. That's the model of the leader we're talking about today. And where did they learn that from? There is still no university on planet Earth which does a degree in leadership. It's all management. But if there's a model today that we could foster, I would take into the boardroom. Forget this soft skills nonsense. Knowing when to be firm, knowing when to be clear, knowing when to be available, knowing when to anticipate, knowing when the room just needs the soft touch, knowing when you need to be robust, knowing when you just need to be there, knowing when you need to support, knowing that no matter who it is, they've got your unconditional love, but it's not there to be toyed with. That's the leader we're talking about. And for many of us, it may come a little bit more naturally than to many others. So, what Simone and Jay have done is given you a network. A network is powerful. Support each other, look after each other. And if there was a message I could leave you with as we're coming towards the end of our time together, look out for each other, look after each other. Look out for each other, look after each other. As optimistic as I am, it's still tough. It can be really lonely. And there's going to be some tough moments to go through. Let's start off by supporting each other. Inclusion means everyone. It's everybody in, nobody out.
Wow. Thank you, René. That was amazing. That was amazing. We really, really appreciated that. Yeah, and I really hope that that gave loads of food for thought. And do you know what I mean? And just in terms of how you're managed and how you manage. So again, give thanks, René. That was amazing, amazing.
Thank you very much, Simone. Thank you, Jay. And look, we'll send you the deck. Please share with all of my colleagues online. And thank you very much for taking the time to listen.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, we will see you. Our next session is in September. We're off in August. So enjoy the summer break, obviously. I hope you guys are all getting on with your coaches and your mentors. And if anything, I hope that re-energized you in terms of how you're into. I'm sure that you guys are making the most of your coaches and your mentors, but I hope that that kind of re-energized you and made you feel, bloody hell, is this what we're doing out here? So have a fantastic summer. Obviously, we've got the WhatsApp group. Keep in contact. Let us know. I'm loving all the news that you guys are sharing. It's so fantastic. And we will speak to you all very soon. And this session will be up soon. Lots of love, people. Speak soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye all.